introducing our expert, it is my pleasure to introduce our president, Tesol Italy president, that is Maria Rossella, that wants to welcome you. Rossella, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here and joining our webinar today. And as Daniela said, I'm the president of Tesol Italy, and I'd like to give you some information about what our association is, and especially for those one who are new at Tesol Italy. And the acronym Tesol stands for Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Language. But what is Tesol Italy? It is a professional association which is made by teachers for teachers. It was started in 1975 by two great pioneers, active pioneers and leading thinkers on education. And we are an affiliate, one of the many affiliates of Tesol International, which is based in Virginia. And Tesol International has got affiliates all over the world. So that's why we say that we are one of the many. We are accredited by the Ministry of Education, so that's why we can also issue certificate of attendance. So our mission is just to develop the expertise of all those people who are involved in teaching English to speakers of other languages, but also to foster professional growth and active participation in language teaching. So we collaborate with other organizations which are involved in English language teaching, including the Italian Ministry of Education, the American Embassy in Rome, the British Council, Indira as well, and other professional language associations, but also some university, Italian university. So the kind of professional development that we can offer varies from language improvement courses, CLIL language improvement and methodology courses, pre-service and in-service training, self-development opportunities, training of trainers, of teacher trainers, workshop, seminar, as the one you're attending now. But our main activity is our annual convention, that is 2-day convention. And the next convention will be in November, 13, 14 November, next November. And we have been planning our annual convention in physical space. But if the restriction on large gathering are still on in November, we move our convention on to a virtual format. So just to conclude my short introduction is just to give you some information about the certificate of attendance. You will receive the certificate of attendance some days after the webinar. But I'd like to remind just one who are not Tesol Italy members that if you want a certificate of attendance, you have to fill in the membership form, which is you can find it on our website. Probably Daniela is going to give you also in the chat the link for those one who didn't fill in the form. Okay, thank you. Hope you will enjoy today's webinar. I hope to see you numerous also in next events organized by Tesol Italy. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Rossella. Just a few words to introduce our expert, our guest speaker, that is Michael Lacey Freeman. Michael has been working in the field of English language teaching for nearly 30 years, both as university teacher and ELT author. He is also a storyteller and has traveled around Italy and other parts of the world to tell his stories and spread the message that words are powerful. He has published and written material for many course books, and 12 of his graded readers have been published, 5 of which have won Extensive Reading Foundation Language Learner Literature Awards. In 2017, he was invited to be on the board of directors of the Extensive Reading Foundation. So we are all happy to host you here today, and just looking forward to hear about your presentation. Michael, the floor is yours.
The Tesol umbrella, because Tesol for me has I've lost control. Sorry. Can you see the screen? Can you see
Not
me?
yet. We can see you, but not the screen. You can share the slides again. Can you share the slides again?
You've disappeared from my. You've disappeared from the screen for me.
You can try again.
Okay. No, I can't actually see the. Let's just try to get you back. I might have to seek assistance here.
Just click on the folder with the arrow.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
So I will. I lost. I actually lost the interface here of you. So now I'll share it again.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can you see it? Okay. Okay. As I was saying, sorry about that interruption. It's particularly important for me because Tesol, to speak under the Tesol umbrella, it's been an important organization for me for my own professional development. And the very first conference I did the talk at was a Tesol conference for my local group, Tesol Italy Marche. And maybe some of you from my group are here, and hello if you are. And that was a wonderful experience. So I'm really happy to be back to speak at a Tesol event today with you, and to talk to you about reading and creating the reading bug, and how basically we can create a reaction, how we can get our students to react to what they read, to enjoy what they read, to react, and to create, as I said in the abstract, this relationship between reaction and creation is quite interesting. I'm going to speak from the point of view, obviously, as a teacher of English as a second language. But sometimes I will shift perspective a little bit because I'll also speak from the point of view of a writer of stories that are used to help our students to improve their English. And so I will, now and again, I will shift perspective when I think it informs what I want to speak about. And I think, in fact, I will begin with a very brief story, which I think sums up some of the things I want to say today. And the story is about a young boy, and he's walking to school. And it's not a very pleasant journey on this particular day because it's very icy on the ground, it's cold, and it's slippery. The pavement is slippery. And he's walking to school, and he's getting a little bit worried because he's going to be late, and he's never been late for school before. And the problem is that every step he takes, the pavement is so slippery that he takes 2 steps back. So he takes a step forward, slips, and takes 2 steps back. So needless to say, it takes him a long time to get to school. Finally, eventually he gets to school, and he's late. And the teacher asks him, why are you late? And he says, I'm sorry, I'm very late because it was so slippery on the ground that every step I took forward, I took 2 steps back. The teacher thought about this for a moment and then asked the student, how did you get to school then? If you took 1 step forward and took 2 steps back, how did you arrive at school? And the boy said, it was simple. I just turned round and started to walk home. And I think this is something that We all do. Sometimes in order to reach an objective, to reach a destination, we have to walk towards home, to where it all started, where our values were created, where our language was learned, let's say. To go, and so often to reach an objective, we point our feet in the direction of home and walk towards home. We take one step towards home and 2 steps closer to our destination. And this picture sums it up, I think, perfectly. This how much stories play a part in our language development and in the development of our values and our beliefs. Whether it's reading stories or watching stories or listening to stories, it's a part of a raw material which builds who we are, makes up who we are. So when I'm talking about creating a reading bug, I'm talking about taking one step home, and it's not something that is necessarily unfamiliar. It's something that's warm, welcoming, it's home. As Christine Nuttall said a long time ago in her book of teaching reading in a foreign language, to improve, the best way to improve one's knowledge in a foreign language is to go and live among its speakers. And that's true. It's true for me. I come from Britain, and I lived in Britain for the first 26 years of my life. And then I moved to Italy, and I learned Italian by living amongst its speakers. And my first teacher was a 4-year-old boy, because I lived in a house. I rented a room. The landlady in a house, the landlady and her son was 5 years old. And he talked to me nonstop and taught me so many things. But failing that, if you can't go and live amongst its speakers, the next best way is to read extensively in it. And that's what I'm going to talk about. That's quite a bold claim, but I believe it's true. I think that if we read extensively, the more we read, the better we get at a language. And it's the best way to improve your language skills, the most efficient way. We do a lot of reading already as teachers in class, of course. Here we have intensive, what we call intensive reading skills that we use every day in, day out in class. It can be summed up with the acronym LIST, LIST. We're teaching our students, we have like certain language goals. So the things that they are reading, they have certain, we have certain objectives, like we want to introduce new structures, new vocabulary. So we're always trying to stretch our students. A bit like a tree, we're trying to stretch those branches out and to help them to develop. And so the reading we give them stretches them, introduces them to new structures and new vocabulary. We also try to teach our students skills and strategies for reading, to employ the strategies that we use when we read in our own language. Skimming and scanning and so forth. Sometimes we want to generate an idea from something that we give to our students to lead to something else, to some kind of production. And so we also have this as a goal very often. And also we look at structure, because it's very important to understand the different linguistic conventions of another language, of English, and to talk about structure. For example, to talk about how important topic sentences are in English, paragraphing, how there are structures like a typical one, like the SP-SE structure, with an essay where a structure would be, you would begin an essay with explaining what the situation is, then talking about the problem at hand, and then evaluating the solutions, talking about the solutions, sorry, and then finally evaluating what conditions are necessary to make those solutions work. And that's a typical text structure. So we do all of these things with our students when we're working on reading. And it's always, obviously we're trying to stretch them, as I say. But a tree also grows because of its roots. And its roots are fundamental. And so we also, another kind of reading, which is equally important, both are really important, both kinds of reading are fundamental, is extensive reading. To read quickly and enjoyably with adequate comprehension. So they, meaning students, do not need dictionary. So they have another acronym here, READ, R-E-A-D. And this is just as important. If you think about it, when we learn anything, we use these two dimensions to learning, intensive and extensive. I remember once, many years ago, I was playing tennis, with somebody I didn't know very well, and she served. She started the match, and I was a bit, I didn't know whether I would be very good at tennis. I wasn't very experienced, but she bounced the ball, and she bounced the ball like a top tennis player, Serena Williams. She threw the ball in the air, and she looked like a professional. She was holding the racket perfectly. I knew I was doomed. I knew that I was going to be destroyed. But then, when the ball made contact with the racket, it crashed into the net. And at that point, I knew I was going to be okay, because several times, time after time, the same thing happened. After playing, I very politely, because I didn't know this person very well, I asked her, how come you're not so good at tennis? You look so good at the beginning. And she said, well, I went to a few lessons at the beginning. I did a tennis course, and I learned how to hold the racket and how to bounce the ball and all these different things. We'd learned a lot of the technique of how to hold things and how to hold your body and everything. And then we were going to start playing, but the weather got bad, and I came to the lesson with an umbrella because I didn't want to get wet. But the coach wouldn't let me play with an umbrella, and so I decided to stop going to the tennis course. And so, effectively, that chance to play, which would have made her obviously into a better player, she didn't take up. I used to play chess, and like chess for me, the first job I had when I left university was I worked with old people with physical disabilities. And I used to play chess with this elderly gentleman who was very good. And obviously, I learned the strategies necessary to play chess, sorry, how the pieces moved, and all of this. And I learned how to do this. But I got better through playing with this elderly gentleman. He was very elderly, so he would often fall asleep. And while he was sleeping, I would do something else and then come back and play when he woke up. And playing made me better. So there's two aspects, really, intensive and extensive learning. So as Daniela said when she presented me, I'm a member of the Extensive Reading Foundation, which is a global organization that promotes extensive reading around the world. And the main aim of Extensive Reading Foundation is quite simple. It's to get students to read. It's to get that reading bug. And it doesn't really matter what it is that they read. There's no kind of filter. It's just getting that passion for reading, and how can we get our students to read in a way where they actually enjoy it. If you think about these two kinds of reading that I outlined just now, intensive and extensive, it's a bit like, okay, you're trying to get to a destination, and intensive reading is a bit like there's a lot of traffic on the road. So you have to keep stopping and starting because you're reading stuff that's challenging and difficult, and that's important. And extensive reading is a bit like it's a bit like driving on an empty road where you can drive quite freely. There's no stopping and no starting. So the reader is reading things that are well within their capability, that they can read and enjoy. So getting the reading bug involves three different factors, I think. One, language that is familiar. We need to find stories or fiction or non-fiction where the language is familiar. So, if you have a student who has a B1 level, I would suggest an A2 level, so that the student doesn't have to reach for the dictionary every 5, 10 words or whatever it is, but actually can read it. And this way, they're meeting structures that they're and vocabulary, recycling things, and understanding different contexts and meeting in different contexts, vocabulary and structures, and learning in this way, improving, consolidating. So it's very important to sort of like find something where the language is not too challenging for the student. And it's very important as well to find stories that are easy to follow. They must feel like real stories. You know, when I write a story, one of the first things I do when I finish it is I give it to a native speaker to read to make sure they don't get bored, because it must look and feel like a real story. There is a helping hand, obviously, because the language is graded, but the reader must not see that helping hand. It must be a story in its own right that hangs together as a story. To find a story like this. One of the great moments for me with one of my stories was when I went to a conference in Japan, in Tokyo, and there were stands, obviously, as there are in all conferences. And during the break, people at the conference would come and look at the books on offer on the stands. And there was a teacher, a native speaker of English, who kept coming to the stand where my book was and reading my book, my story. And I was really thrilled about this because it meant that it really was a story that worked. It was a 3-day conference. At every break, she would come to the stand and read a chapter. It was on the 3rd day she'd got to the final chapter, and I just had to speak to her to say, to ask, to introduce myself, really. And she responded in this way. Shh. Now, normally when somebody responds in this way, you feel a little bit like it's not a nice thing to hear. But inside I was jumping up and down with joy because it meant she was really wanted to know what happened. It really was a story that worked, even though the level was A2. And the characters have to be easy to relate to. So you have to look for stories to inspire your students, to get them into this reading bug, to find stories with characters that they relate to. So characters that are more or less the same age, obviously, would be ideal. But it really depends on the age. For example, if you're talking about 12-year-olds, it's even better to have stories with characters that are a little bit older, because children of that age, they're looking at that older age group and looking for role models, starting to look for role models, I think. And so they're more, and that's why YouTube, for example, is populated with these celebrities, which like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds want to be like. And these celebrities are like 15, 16 years of age. So looking for characters that are easy to relate to. These 3 things are really important. And this I'm indebted to the work of Willie A. Renandia, whose work has been really important in promoting extensive reading, and its website is really useful. Stephen Krashen and George M. Jacobs as well. So we can say, okay, this is all very well. This is true. How do I find this book? How do I find these books? Where do I get them? Sometimes it's enough to find one book. What was called by Trelise in 2001 called a home run book. A book that changes everything. I'm sure that people here in this group, there are many of you who are avid readers who love reading, maybe all of us. And if I ask you about your reading, the story of your reading, let's say when you started reading, many of you will talk about a book that changed everything. That reading that book changed everything for you. And that's a home run book. And if you can get your students if you can find for your students a book like that, it really can make a massive difference. I know this through personal experience because I feel fortunate enough to say that I have written a book that is considered by some students to be a home run book that's changed their relationship with reading and with English. And I wrote a story some years ago about a young boy who was bullied at school quite mercilessly. A story of many, unfortunately. And, you know, I wanted to write it. It was important to me because it was a story. It was my story. It was a true story. And I wrote it at an A2 level, you know, a low level. So I wanted as many people as possible to be able to read it. And, you know, I was really happy when I got it in my hands, this book. And because this story is very much the story of a teacher as well who changed things for the character, for me personally, when I was at school. When I got the book, I went back to Britain, got a plane, went to my teacher's hometown, found the street where she lived, and found the house where she lived. And I rang the doorbell, and she opened the door, and I gave her the book. And I said, thank you. And 35 years had passed. And she remembered me. Well, she was polite enough to at least to pretend that she remembered me, maybe. But it was like a circle had been completed. And I thought, okay, now I want to take this book around the schools, especially in Italy, to talk about the issue of bullying. Maybe I can make a difference. Maybe if one child feels less alone because of me, the fact that I've shared this book, that will be wonderful. I didn't know what would happen was that actually I didn't take the book anywhere. The book took me. And students read it, they responded to it. And I started to travel around Italy into different schools and talking about the story, and so many questions from students. It was, and for many students, I've discovered this has been a home run book. That it's a book, I read it and I understood everything. You know, it's one of the most common reactions, as if it's like some kind of miracle. And so it can change the relationship with English. To get this, obviously, we need to be able to find their home run book or to find the books that your students will respond to and react to. We need abundance. Obviously, we need a lot of books. And I think it's fair to say by now we can say that there is this abundance. There is this abundance of, because graded readers now are becoming almost a genre in themselves. In many parts of the world, students read these books and respond to them. And schools and universities use them in many parts of the world. And I've done many Skype meetings with students from places like Indonesia, Mexico, Japan, all about these kinds of stories. They're attracting more and more authors of quality authors. Maybe in the past the standard of these books was varied, but now it's getting a much more competitive environment where they really have something to offer. And it's not just classic fiction now. It's also original stories, fiction, real life stories, a variety of different things and different levels that you can choose from. Where do you find them? Obviously, the problem sometimes is that to get the physical book, you know, to have these books in your hand, sometimes is difficult. But by now, as well, you can find a lot of material online. If you visit the Extensive Reading Foundation, you will find links to virtual bookstores and places where you can download books for free and consult them and use them with your students. If you adopt a course book with your students, with your classes, often they will also give you a number of graded readers, and which are placed on a virtual bookshelf on internet. Your students can access that as well. So that now the options are, there are many more options available to a teacher to try to nudge the student in the right direction, to show them, maybe to change their relationship with reading, to create that reading bug. So this creation reaction relationship, obviously, you know, in the abstract, I talked about this, the fact that this is an anagram. You know, it's you just move the C and you've got in the word reaction to the front, and you've got the word creation. But of course, a reaction is in itself an act of creation. A reaction generates ideas in evaluating, in predicting, in analyzing, and all of these different things that happen when a student, when a reader is inside a story. and is enjoying the story happen. So it's not just physical creations we're talking about, it's also mental creations. So reactions. We want to get our students to react. One of the reactions I think that happen, one of the things that happens when a student reads is that they gain more confidence. They feel more confident about their skills because, as I said, this feeling. I've read a book. I read a book in English. I made it to the finishing line. I read it from cover to cover. It's a big deal. It's a bit like I always equate it like to the Walt Disney story, Dumbo. Dumbo is an elephant with big ears, and but he can fly. And why can he fly? Because he has a feather. And fundamentally, he can fly because he believes he can with this feather that he can fly. And so it's not to be underestimated. It's half the battle, let's say, is getting our students in a position where they feel confident enough. They feel as though they can make it, that they can do it. So this is obviously one thing, that choosing a book with the right level can make a big difference. And obviously, communicative reaction is obviously, if a student is inside a story, they will be more communicative. They will have lots of questions. When I go around schools or online, when I'm outside of Italy, often the readers, the students, they're full of questions. They wanting to know why the story ended in the way it did, and wanting to know about the characters, and wanting to know if there's a sequel, but peppering me with questions in English all the time, obviously. And in these meetings, particularly when I go around to schools in Italy, I always pretend that I don't speak Italian, that I only speak English. So they have to speak to me in English, and their curiosity is so strong. Their need to have answers to these questions is so strong that they carry on. They keep the questions going, moving in English. And at the end of the meeting, I always say to the students, I've been a little bit deceitful because actually I can speak Italian, and I tell them at the end. And the interesting thing is, I was at a school in Bologna quite recently, and this happened as it always seems to happen. The students continue talking to me in English, even though they know that now that I can speak to them in Italian. So this is the kind of reaction that we're looking for. That a home run book can have this kind of reaction and do these kinds of things. So with fiction, we got the opportunity for these three things. So basically, looking around, reading around the story, basically. Let's say that what can happen. I'll give you an example. I'll give you very briefly. I'll run through a story that I wrote quite recently and tell you what happens can happen in terms of a reaction. I wrote a story about a young boy called Sam, and Sam loves colors, and his life is governed by color. And he's a great artist, and at school he has a very close relationship with his art teacher, and he sees everything in terms of colors. In fact, in the story, every character is represented by a color. Is the color yellow? Sam is yellow. His mother, another important character in the story, is red, and the teacher is blue. So she wears blue clothes, and they're represented by a color. And he can draw, he closes his eyes and he can see everything, a world of color. But he feels quite bad because he feels as though he's not very good at other school subjects. He's got this gift, but he doesn't really value it. And so, but he has a very close relationship with his teacher, his art teacher. And then one day his art teacher says to him, because Sam is talking about the fact that he's not very good at history and he's not very good at maths. And the art teacher says, history is not just black and white, Sam. History is all the colours. And that inspires him suddenly to use colour to get better at history, to get better at maths, to use his gifts to become better at everything, to use his imagination and his world of colour. And this is a story the students can relate to. The characters are more or less the same age, if not a little bit older. The language is easy to understand. It's a kind of A1 plus, maybe A2 kind of language level. And, you know, it's something that can create this kind of feeling of confidence as well. They read it and they can understand it. But they can also read around the subject in this way. Because if you get a book or a story that the students respond to, then don't rush it. Get them to also to read around to find out if, like, maybe find out about some things about art, for example. Sam in this story is very keen on Van Gogh, the artist Van Gogh. So get the students to find out some information about some of his paintings. Or find out that the story is set in a school in Britain, to find out about school life in Britain and things like that. So you're getting your students then to widen their reading, maybe moving from fiction to non-fiction, as a result of the fact that they have this, they're inside this story and they're enjoying this story. Generally speaking, when students read, quite understandably, they engage in what is called narrow reading. It's like if you read a story and you like it, you look for other stories that are similar, maybe with the same characters. You want to stay. You've found a world that you like with characters that you warm to. Why would you want to go anywhere else? You want to stay there. It's a bit like when we watch TV series. We watch season 1 and then we want to watch season 2 and season 3 and so on. So it's normally, and now with abundance, as I said before, it's possible to find also stories where the characters, it's a series of stories with the same characters. But this kind of thing, reading around the subject, you can get your students to widen their reading by finding out more things that they're inspired to find out about because of the story itself. Also, with this kind of, with reading, a reaction can be, it gives an opportunity for your students to talk about things that are difficult to talk about in their own language, in front of their peers. Bullying is a perfect example of that. It's difficult to speak about it in Italian, but if you're speaking about it through the eyes of a character and it's in another language, it becomes much easier to talk about this. And when they get questions about this subject at schools around Italy, I noticed that there is this willingness to talk about it and to share personal things and fears as well. When I go into a class, and normally I get asked to participate, to come and speak because some of the children are bullied in their class and a teacher will contact me. I always ask the teacher not to tell me who is being bullied, because I will find out for myself. I understand almost immediately from the body language when a child is bullied. Normally they may try to make themselves very small, as if they think they feel as though they don't deserve to occupy much space in the world. So one of the first things to try to do with a kid who's bullied is to get them to change their physiology, their body language, their body to, they do deserve to occupy space. But it's also the questions they ask. There's one question that they always ask is this question here. They ask, are you happy? They ask me if I'm happy, because they cannot imagine a world or a future for themselves where one day they will be happy. And many of us have been bullied, I'm sure, in the past. And if you cast your mind back, that's the mindset. That's how you feel. You feel locked in to this idea that you will never be happy. So as soon as I hear that question, I know. So this gives a wonderful opportunity to bring up things that normally students wouldn't be able to, especially at difficult times. We all deal with different age groups. There's a kind of a wide variety of different teachers in the group I saw earlier today. But you know, it's something that for some age categories, some age groups, it's a really difficult time to find identity and to be able to express certain things. And reading fiction can give that an opportunity. Excuse me. And fiction can make you become part of a community. And this is something also really important, I think. Just at the beginning of the lockdown in Italy, I know that now, you know, all of us, it's touched all of us now around the world, COVID-19. And when the lockdown, when suddenly that classroom, we were swept away from our students and that direct contact with our students. And basically, a teacher, a friend of mine, contacted me and asked me, he said, you know, I'm looking for something to keep this connection with my students. I can't see them. I'm looking for some kind of, what can I want to give them something so that we remain a community. And she said something that really struck me, and I think will remain with me forever. She said to me, now we are alone, but I want to find something where we can be alone together. And those two words, normally you don't see them at the same moment, alone together, to be alone together. And I think that is what reading can do. It can create that kind of community. You're alone, but you're part of a community of people who read the same story, and a community of characters inside the story who are waiting for you to join them. And so, obviously, I said the topic of discussion became reading and finding a book that would be suitable, a story that could be shared. Fiction can do this. Community, you know, being a part of a community, often also reading non-fiction, can spark that community into action. If you get a story that really moves your class and they read it and they're really fired up, you can actually get them to use that, to try to do something that makes a difference, either in spreading awareness about an issue or actually physically, you know, doing something to make a difference, to make a change. When you get them to a certain place, you know, don't lose that opportunity to extend it, to get them to create. Books like Global Issues, books like this, which talk about things that are like a real, basically real problems and in simple language that is easy to understand. You know, and also let's not forget that they can understand these things as well because they can use their knowledge of the world, the knowledge of the world they have to decipher it as well. And now let's say with our students, you know, for many years, at least in Europe, Harry Potter was the teenage hero, the hero for many, and many adults still have fond memories of Harry Potter. Um, but now there's a new kind of hero, a young hero, which is someone like Greta Thunberg, and where now more than ever, teenagers feel as though they can make a difference, and they have a future that's much bigger than our future. And so, you know, why not use English as well to get them to talk about these things and to do things and to make a difference? It's also making English real and extending the walls of the classroom, making our classrooms bigger. Normally, where I teach in a room, in a classroom with no windows. So, you know, artificial light, uninspiring, very uninspiring kind of environment. And so this is the same story for many people. I think, you know, we have to get our students like in a place where they're inspired and where they can make English real in a place where, you know, in a kind of environment which is small and sometimes grubby and not inspiring at all. And so a book can kind of change that, help to extend the walls of those classrooms, of our classrooms, especially because now, you know, we have an international community here, people from different parts of the world. I looked at the composition of the group, and it's people from all over the world. It's a truly global group, and there is an ever-growing community of teachers that are doing this, global teachers. And I feel as though I'm one of these teachers as well. And so it's very common for me to hook up to do a lesson with students from another part of the world, or to collaborate with teachers from other parts of the world. And there's a global community, and so we can make it possible to extend the walls of the classroom. Because I want to leave some space for questions, but just like some of the things, some of the creations that can be, we talked about, just talked about projects, but like you can get your students to make posters as well. And a poster, it sounds like a small thing, but I think it's an enormous thing to get a student to make a poster, because you're really taking them to a place where it's not a question of right or wrong, because you can get them to say, draw a poster, make a poster which sums up what you think of the story, what the message is for you, what the thing, and then they can't be right or wrong. It's their opinion. So giving them that chance to express themselves with a story, if they're inspired, getting them to talk about different endings, how they would have liked the story to have ended. A lot of students talk to me about that, about stories, and say, why couldn't it have ended this way? Why did this person go away? Couldn't he? This kind of thing. An alternative ending. So videos, role plays, this kind of thing. Maybe to with my writing, I also make songs that combine with the story, because I think it's an excellent way also of drawing a student into a story, is to provide a song as well. And so most of my stories have songs. So some of the students who read the stories that I write, they make they try to make videos which sum up the song. What moment in the story is the song about, for example. So getting a student to react to a story that they like. The review, obviously, then there's the possibility to write a review. Make it real. It can be posted. Why not? The first ever story I wrote, I was on the internet, and I found some students from Japan had made a review of the story. They had been reviewing it, and so I responded to this. So it became something real. And a biblio battle, which maybe in Italy, I don't think it's very well known in Italy, but in some parts of the world, it's very popular. It's like a kind of oracy, really, because students are invited to advocate a book that they really like, and to try to convince the other students in the class to read it. And so they kind of fight for their book and make posters and make and speeches and things like that to sort of try and convince the others in the class to read it. And so these are just like some of the things. If you can get the student to that place where you find that book, that your students can, that story, that piece of fiction or non-fiction, that your students can respond to. So I've written the last slide, buona lettura, which in Italian which means happy reading. And here you have like a link at the top there to YouTube, where you can find some of the songs that I've made that go with my stories. But I think if you put my name in YouTube, you will find those songs anyway, if you're interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this very inspiring presentation. On behalf of Tesol Italy, I'm really grateful to you, because you have contributed to Tesol initiative to support teachers during this hard time of lockdown. And I think that for all of them, your talk was really inspiring. I was there when you joined Tesol, and I was really fascinated by your first talk there. And at the beginning, I was saying that presenting you that you have traveled all around the world to spread the message that words are powerful. And I think that today we have really experienced the powerfulness of words. You have surrounded us in an enchanted atmosphere, and never before you you have made us breathe the powerfulness of silence too, because everyone was silent, just listening to you. It was sort of meta storytelling, if I can say, a story to tell how to tell stories. Someone asked some questions, but I think that also Rossella wants to add something.
I just would like to personally thank Michael for sharing his time and experience with us, and I do believe we all can benefit from the suggestion about reading that you share with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to do this. As I said at the beginning, Tesol means a lot to me. It's a part of my personal journey, and I was really happy to be invited to be a part of this initiative.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we have 5 minutes left, just to answer, there was a question about the acronym LIST. Someone wanted to know something more, if there is a research behind it or whatever you can add regarding that topic, because he was very interested in it. And someone else asked for links for books to read.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's some way I can supply these links, maybe attach it to the recording. I think you're going to send a recording. That would be a good idea. I think I can send those links to some of the sites. I didn't want to obviously advertise anything, but these links are free. I mean, they're books that are free, that they can be used quite freely by everybody. And the best place to go if you want to research this a little is the Extensive Reading Foundation website. I can send the link to that as well. But again, if you Google Extensive Reading Foundation, you will find it immediately. And there are, I think, over 600 articles that talk about extensive reading, links to things, to videos as well, and to reading material, research, and everything. There's a complete body of research on this. And so, yeah, I invite you to, if you are interested, to come along. And yeah, I can attach, maybe send to Daniel some links that would be useful.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's Adeline Chavez. I've got a screen here. It says richiesta di annotazione. I don't know what that is, if it's something that I don't know, but anyway, it's on my screen.
Okay, so lots of comments. Okay, really a lot of very nice words for your presentation, Michael. Yeah, great, wonderful presentation. Great. It was so nice. Someone appreciated also the powerfulness of your tone of voice because it was really involving. So nice to hear.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That's really nice.
Very informative too. Yes, so powerful, but also very informative. And someone asked, where can we find your songs?
The songs, in fact, you can find them, some of them on YouTube, some of them, because, and they're just like, I work, I make songs with my friends, and which basically accompany the stories that I write. But it's just a group of middle-aged men pretending to be rock stars. So we're not like, well, to be honest, to be fair, my friend is a really good musician, actually, but he's an excellent musician. But these songs you can find on YouTube, some of them. If you, we have a YouTube channel, which is Michael Lacey Freeman. If you put in my name on the YouTube, on Google, you will find or on YouTube, and the search engine, you will find the videos. But again, I can send a link there to the YouTube channel. And some of the songs are just like, they're embedded in the story. So when you read the story, you also have access to the song or songs. Like this story that I briefly told earlier is there's a song that goes with that called Sam.
Okay, someone asked also, and I think that you can add the links to the list for extensive reading for adult learners. So if you can add these links to the list, it would be great for us. So I think that
I will do that absolutely, yeah, before so that there's a complete list of links that can be useful.
Okay, and then last but not least, an invitation for another webinar. So they are looking forward to hearing you again and listening to you and the powerfulness of your voice. So thank you,
Always
Michael.
a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for us. Okay, so Michael, really thanks a lot for joining us and for contributing with such an inspiring presentation to our mission, Tesol Italy mission. Okay, thank you everyone, and I think we'll have some more webinars.
Maybe if I could just say one more thing, Daniela, just as Sarah's just reminded me with a message. If you want to listen to the latest song, it's called Across the Sky. And I'll send a link to that as well. Okay, the latest song, which is about like it's about like the period of that we are living now. It's about inviting our children to sort of think big, and so I would send the link to that as well. That's
Okay, so for all the people who are not Tesol members, I shared the link to our association website. It is Tesol Italy again, and you can find also links to our Telegram channel and to YouTube with the recording. We will share the recordings of this presentation. So it will be a chance for you to listen to Michael again. Okay, so bye-bye everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I can say it's very late in the afternoon, and save the date for our next webinar. Stay tuned on the Facebook page, and just join if you like our association. Rossella, you want to say okay? Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
goodbye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.